Thank you, Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honour to be here today to represent An Garda Síochána and to address you. As the Chair said, my name is Justin Kelly and I'm an Assistant Commissioner in An Garda Síochána, and my responsibility is around tackling organised and serious crime. I've been in An Garda Síochána over 31 years, and I've worked in the drug area at a number of different levels, from street supply in the 1990s to my current role, which much of the focus is on partnership with international law enforcement agencies. I've been asked to speak to you today about our organisation's drug strategies. Firstly, it's important to say that An Garda Síochána is a community-based police force, and our mission is simple. It is to keep people safe and to protect the vulnerable. An Garda Síochána is your police force, and we enforce the laws enacted by the Oireachtas on your behalf. The function of An Garda Síochána is set out in Section 7 of the Garda Síochána Act 2005, which is to provide policing and security services to the state. We are committed to upholding the law, which of course is one of the key bases for democracy. However, An Garda Síochána must prudently apply the law in a manner which is ethical and fair to all. An Garda Síochána is fully supportive of our country's health-led national drug strategy, and we work closely with our partners in health and other criminal justice partners to reduce harm and ensure safety. The law enforcement focus of An Garda Síochána is not on the prosecution of those addicted to controlled drugs, but on disrupting drug trafficking supply lines into this country and dismantling organised criminal groups behind these. At the forefront of this work is our Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, known as DOCB. DOCB undertake intelligence-led operations which lead to seizures of substantial amounts of drugs, firearms and cash. We also mount what are known as threat-to-life operations, which essentially prevent criminal gangs committing murders. As you will see, in the last 8 years, we have seized more than €335 million worth of controlled drugs, preventing those drugs reaching our communities and causing harm. We have also seized 147 firearms, which would have been used to murder, maim and intimidate members of our communities. We also have importantly deprived criminal gangs of over €28 million in cash. This is the profit of drugs supply, and this money would have been reinvested into drug supply and into other forms of criminality. Since 2016, our organisation has convicted over 80 people for feud-related activity for a range of offences, including murder, firearms, drug trafficking and money laundering. We also are keenly, one of our keen aims is to deprive and deny people access to assets that they get from illegal activity, and you all know the work of CAB. We also have a network of local drugs units in every part of the country who focus on localised and street-level supply. We also coordinate all our activities under what is known as Operation Tara. Drug supply, as you will all know, is international in nature. Much of the drug supply in our country is controlled by criminals who do not live here and who in fact reside in other continents. A straightforward way to look at supply is to look at it at 4 different levels. And as you can see here, the first level we can say is global or international. This involves the actual drug production and its international movement. The criminal gangs at this level are powerful and have substantial resources and influence. The second level is national or middle market. Here in Ireland, we have groups involved in the importation of significant amounts of controlled drugs and the wholesale distribution of them around our country. The third level is local or street level. People at this level are the ones who actually put the drugs into the user's hands. Finally, of course, we have the user of the drugs. As you can see, there is a direct link between those who use drugs and the criminal gangs who use extreme violence to enforce their business models. Drug trafficking is a priority at European and international level. We know 40% of criminal networks in the EU are involved in drug trafficking, and 60% of criminal networks use violence. For us in An Garda Síochána, it is vital that we have international partnerships to disrupt the transnational groups. As our Commissioner Drew Harris recently said, it takes a network to defeat a network. And Garda Síochána is involved in many policing operations with our colleagues abroad, as well as with our partners here in Ireland, the Naval Services, Customs and Revenue. We now also have a network of Garda officers around the world, from Bogota in Colombia to Dubai, to further our drugs enforcement activities. Many problematic drug users commit crime to fuel their addictions, and Garda Síochána deal with these on a daily basis. Offences range from simple theft all the way to murder. And Garda Síochána is often at the forefront of supporting families affected by drug abuse. One particularly challenging area for us is that of drugs-related intimidation, where drugs deaths are levied against family members. And Garda Síochána are willing and supportive partners in a number of initiatives designed to prevent drug harms, and you've heard about some of them already. For example, the Early Warning Emerging Trends Committee, the adult cautioning around the possession of cannabis, the festival back-of-house monitoring programs, which Eamon mentioned, and the proposed supervised injecting facilities. And Garda Síochána, as I have said at the start, are supportive of the current health-led approach to drugs. It is important to know that in our criminal justice system, it is extremely rare for anyone to be imprisoned for the simple possession of drugs alone. If I could give an example to illustrate this, I recently spoke to a colleague who worked for 11 years in one of the busiest courts in the country, dealing with thousands of cases. In that 11 years, that member of Garda Síochána never saw one person convicted for simple possession of drugs. It is also important to know that Garda Síochána have a long history in diverting people away from the criminal justice system. Reference was made earlier from Ben to our juvenile liaison scheme, which every year diverts thousands of people away from the criminal justice system. Our adult cautioning scheme is available for a range of offences, for offences such as minor assaults, criminal damage and theft, and that also diverts people away from the criminal justice system. In 2020, it was extended to cover cannabis, and as Ben has also mentioned to you, there are discussions around extending that now again to other controlled drugs. Ireland is third on the global index for the safest places to live. In 2016, we were at 13. And Garda Síochána has made huge strides in recent years in tackling the organised criminal groups behind our drug supply, with gangland murders at an all-time low. However, we do have concerns around the legalisation of controlled drugs and its impact on wider society. No other country in the world has fully legalised controlled drugs possession. It's important to note that Ireland represents 0.67% of the EU population. An obvious risk if we were to do this would be drugs tourism to our country and all that would bring with it. As Ben referenced to earlier, we also have a border with the United Kingdom. Any situation where we have a different regime to our neighbours in the United Kingdom will lead to significant policing problems. We already see that at the border around fuel smuggling and cigarette smuggling. We know from colleagues elsewhere abroad that decriminalisation of cannabis can have negative effects on policing, with increases in crime and a normalisation of drug use generally. Colleagues abroad have told us of the increased open use of drugs in public parks and on public transport, and an increase in drug driving. Last year in Ireland here, we had nearly 2,700 people arrested for drug driving. In Canada, when they legalised cannabis, they saw almost a doubling of their drug driving. It should also be noted, and Ben referenced to it earlier, organised criminal groups in other countries where they have legalised cannabis have not been eliminated, and in many cases have undercut the legal market or continued to supply to less advantaged areas. Some people have called for the state to regulate and provide drugs and to tax those drugs, and this will remove organised criminals from the system. However, there is an obvious flaw to this in relation to some drugs. Cocaine, for example, is only produced in South America and is completely controlled by the cartels. Last year, the Mexican cartel were responsible for 30,000 murders. It would obviously be unconscionable for the Irish state to source cocaine from the cartels. Similarly, heroin, the majority of heroin comes from Afghanistan. Afghanistan, as we know, is now ruled by one of the most odious regimes in history, the Taliban. Finally, on behalf of Garda Síochána, may I close by wishing you the best with your deliberations. We, of course, will provide you with any further information or any further inputs that will help you in your journey in the coming months. Thank you.